We were promised shock and awe with executive orders, and we definitely got it. But Congress has not followed along. President Trump has signed only 5 bills into law in his first 100 days in office. And these are the only 2 presidents that have signed fewer bills, right? We have to go all the way back to William Henry Harrison, who signed 0 bills. He served 31 days in 1841 because he died of pneumonia after taking his jacket off to prove his youth and vigor as at his inaugural address. And then James Garfield is the other who also signed 0 bills. Now, he was assassinated in 1881 after 120 politically turbulent days in office. Our Capitol Hill reporter Rebecca Zelko spoke with Representative Chip Roy to find out what is holding up Trump's mandate.
All right, everyone, I am back on Capitol Hill today speaking with Congressman Chip Roy of Texas. And first and foremost, in this whirlwind that has been Congress these last couple of weeks, I want to first and foremost ask you about reconciliation. Talk of the town, especially on Capitol Hill, and I'm curious to know your thoughts because a lot of your colleagues have thrown their support behind this big, beautiful bill, but you yourself have some reservations. Now, break that down for us. What would you like to see changed for you to actually put your support into this bill?
Yeah, well, first of all, look, reconciliation is all about balancing our current priorities and make sure that our spending and our tax policy results in something that could be remotely described as deficit neutral or reducing the deficit. So that's kind of the first, measure of whether you're going to do something successfully or not. We need to deliver on the tax policy that President Trump ran on and that would extend what he did in 2017. We need to deliver on spending restraint, right? And we need to deliver on the priorities that the American people sent us here to deliver on: the border, defense, security, but also significant policies involving reform of these broken institutions. So all of these things are true. The problem is the swamp does what the swamp does. And so now what you've got is a bunch of Republicans running around saying, we got to get this done. We got to get it done. And then they foot it up. Oh, we're going to get this done right before Memorial Day. We got to get this done so you guys can go get on your break and get a break for Memorial Day. And the problem is we've got a flawed bill. That's the bottom line. It has some good tax policy and some not so good tax policy. Some of it is not as extended as it should be. We've got some good spending restraint and some bad spending policy. So, for example, Medicaid, they put the work requirements in. They said, oh, we've got work requirements, but they don't take place until 2029, after the Trump presidency. They have waivers to the work requirements even when they kick in 2029. They do not address at all the ridiculous federal funding of certain states at the expense of other states. For example, the expansion states at the expense of the non-expansion states. $9 of federal money goes for every $1 state money to the able-bodied, which is 7 times more than the $1.33 that goes for every dollar of state spending for the vulnerable. So it's a broken system, and this bill doesn't make it better. It frankly arguably makes it worse, because the end result of what the Republicans are doing now is likely more expanded states, more socialized medicine, more deficits, and frankly, the vulnerable getting hurt at the expense of the able-bodied who should be working and who should be not getting more money than those who are vulnerable.
No, I'm glad that you brought that up because Republicans right now are operating with a historically narrow margin. I mean, there's not a lot of wiggle room. And so when it really comes down to it, if this is the bill that's on the table, could you see yourself coming around to actually support it? Or are you going to have to see these changes actually take place before you could cast your vote in favor of this big, beautiful bill?
Yeah, it has to be amended. I'm not going to be able to support it as it's currently drafted. And those amendments are going to need to be relatively significant. I didn't come here to perpetuate the broken system. I understand that we have a thin majority, but we should deliver. I've been very careful not to deliver any red lines. I haven't said I'm not going to vote for it unless. But I am going to say that when I look at the totality of it all, it better deliver on a significant number of the things we came here to do. I don't believe that this will genuinely drive down deficits. I don't believe that this will fundamentally transform the broken Medicaid system, which is corrupting the system and allowing certain states to scam it and game it and money launder dollars from red states and non-expansion states. And I don't think this does enough on the Inflation Reduction Act to end the ridiculous subsidies of Chinese companies and multi-billion-dollar corporations at the expense of a strong grid in Texas. So there's a long ways to go. Do I believe we can deliver? Sure. And if we have the willpower to do it. We've got a bunch of guys that are going, I need my SALT cap increased so that I can get state and local tax deductions in New York and all these expensive tax jurisdictions, which, by the way, Texas is one too. Our property taxes are, stupidly high. And so, but go take that up with the Texas legislature. Don't ask the rest of the country to subsidize it. So I don't want to subsidize New York. They shouldn't subsidize Texas. So, but we got a bunch of our colleagues who want that. All right, if they want it, that's going to cost. So, if you want to increase the SALT cap, then come work with me on what we need to do on Medicaid. But what we're doing on Medicaid right now is not nearly enough. And a lot of my colleagues are going around saying, oh, look, the score, they says that it's going to save $1.6 trillion or whatever it is. And so isn't that good? Yeah, it's better than what we would have gotten had some of us not demanded that we have spending cuts. But when the spending cuts are all in the out years, they're not real, right? When they don't reform stuff this year, there's no real savings. Somebody come show me what the deficit will be this year. What will the deficit be next year? Maybe the third year, when you get to the end of the Trump presidency, then come talk to me about whether we're actually saving money. I don't think this bill will do that.
Yeah, you mentioned the broken system, and I don't think anything exemplifies that better than the fact that in just the first 100 days and some change, the president has only signed 5 bills into law. I mean, Congress doesn't have much to show for in this first 100 days and some change of the 118th Congress. What do you think has to change in order to actually get more bills signed by the executive and to actually get some of the stuff out the door?
The Senate would have to get rid of the filibuster. I'm not saying they should or shouldn't. But everybody's getting all wrapped around the axle about how many bills we get done. It isn't how many bills we get done, it's whether they do anything. It's whether they're good. The House passed a bill that would have guaranteed that only American citizens vote in American elections. It happens to be my bill called the SAVE Act. The Senate hasn't taken it up. If they do take it up, Democrats will probably block it. Why? Because they can block it if they've got 41 Democrats who are willing to block it because of the 60 vote requirement in the Senate. That is true for everything. So when people say, well, why aren't you getting, certain things passed? Well, go talk to the Senate. I mean, we're passing bills in the House. We passed a bunch of congressional review acts to undo the damage of the Biden administration. We passed a bill to deal with the ridiculous abuse by certain judges of, very specific, in nationwide injunctions and nationwide temporary restraining orders. We passed legislation that would address that and fix it. And so the Senate has got to take that up. Multiple other bills that we need to address and deal with.
Absolutely. Well, Congressman, thank you so much for your time. We look forward to see how all of this takes place in the upcoming weeks.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
Rebecca joins us now. So I want to get right into that interview because I'm actually glad Representative Chip Roy was pretty busy today. At least there's a sign that they're moving out there on Capitol Hill. They're trying to potentially get something done. So from your perspective, what have you seen there in D.C.?
Yeah, as you mentioned, we were able to snag Congressman Roy for a couple minutes out of a very busy schedule this week. Right now, all of the committees are wrapping up their markup on this big, beautiful bill. And so, last night, the Ways and Means Committee, which is in charge of the tax policy, spent 18 hours going through the markup, and they wrapped up at about 8 in the morning today. And so, they've definitely been working a lot more than usual. And so it's been a pretty hectic week here in D.C., seeing how all this reconciliation stuff is panning out. No shortage of drama, that's for sure.
So, you really like Congressman Roy. He seems like a great guy. He says a lot of great stuff. But when we think about this, I guess I'll put it this way. I don't see a lot of people in the audience who are a little upset with Congress right now, who are just going to accept that it's the Senate's fault for an answer. And I know that's not his full answer, right? I get it. But I kind of feel as if, the Senate is a real problem, and we talk about that on this show. It's true. What do you think about that?
Yeah, to your point, everyone's kind of anticipating for this big rollout of, codifying Doge, the Doge cuts, codifying this MAGA mandate, this thing that the president was elected for in November overwhelmingly, and that he has since been trying to implement since he was first inaugurated in January. And so I definitely see the frustration, and it's kind of palpable. The audience, I'm sure, totally understands. Last week, Congress, they passed the bill that officially recognized renaming Gulf of Mexico to Gulf of America, which, sure, that's technically one of Trump's directives, but is it really a top priority? Now, to be fair, a lot of these issues are going to be taken care of through reconciliation, especially the tax stuff. No tax on tips. That's going to be a huge one that was included in the tax bill that we had been seeing being rolled out over these last couple of days. And so with a lot of this commotion, it seems like they're actually, going to try and make some progress here. And the goal is to get this bill done before Memorial Day, I believe, is the target. So we're really counting down on those days. And you mentioned the Senate. Chip Roy, he also kind of pointed the finger at the Senate. And To be fair, I think it is an important criticism. Whereas the House, you can say that they haven't done enough, but from what they have done, the Senate hasn't really been exactly helpful. Even Chip Roy's bill, the SAVE Act, which is like a super common sense piece of legislation for those who aren't familiar, it just requires proof of citizenship to vote. It's passed the House. It's passed the House multiple times in previous Congresses, and the Senate just has never taken it up. And you would think that when Republicans are operating with a supermajority, I mean, we have 53 seats in the Senate, this shouldn't be like a difficult thing to get accomplished. And even with reconciliation, you have Republican senators saying that they're not going to accept the bill as it is. It's going to have to be severely amended in one way or another. And so we're really going to have to see how they manage to get this big, beautiful bill across the line. And it's really going to have to require a lot more coordination than we've seen so far.
All right. And I want to make clear, of course, he is right about the Senate. Fair enough.
He is right. And if Chris Bedford were here, he'd be like, that's how it works. This is exactly, it's supposed to slow down over there in the Senate. But Rebecca, I put on X the other day, everybody likes Doge until it comes to actually making the budget cuts. How are the people out there on Capitol Hill who are supposed to be in line with what we're trying to do here with the American people? They say they want to do the Doge, but when it comes to actually doing the Doge, they don't follow through. We have $4 trillion out there. They're like, are you not entertained?
Yeah, I think it's one of those issues that I think Republicans run into a lot, which is just their messaging is a little bit lackluster when it comes to actually pitching these cuts to people. Nobody likes fraud, waste, and abuse. But let's take the Medicaid issue, for example. This has been a really hot topic in the last couple of weeks on the Hill. You have Democrats and even some moderate Republicans saying, oh, Republicans, they're so scary, they're going to take away your health care and all this sort of thing, which is obviously just this gross overgeneralization of what Medicaid cuts and Medicaid reform really are asking to do. It's really all about the work requirements. It's about making sure that you're able to differentiate between the vulnerable people who are actually supposed to be receiving Medicaid assistance from the people who are perfectly capable of working and perfectly capable of obtaining health care through any other means like the rest of us do, but are able to take advantage of the Medicaid system. So it's like this is a very cut and dry issue. It's not that complicated, I don't think. If it's messaged properly, I think people would be a lot more successful in terms of actually codifying it. But because of that, you've ended up with this watered down version of Medicaid reform, which is just like, we'll kind of enforce the requirements in 2029, which is like not enough. And so I think one of those key things is really just going to be Republicans need to get their messaging in line, and they need to become a lot more efficient.
Well, is she Rebecca Zalko or is she Tiger Woods? Let's go ahead and take a look at a great fist bump action that we had at the end of the interview.
It's looping.
Yeah, it's going to loop. It's going to loop for a long time. Rebecca nailed it. Nailed that interview.
Yeah. Nobody's safe, guys.
Well, that's exactly what we want out there from our Capitol Hill reporter, Rebecca Zalko. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, guys.